Ready?
1 second.
It's a recording.
It's recording.
Okay, face mask, hazmat suit, box set of Wimbledon Classic finals. Are we ready? Good evening and welcome to Unforced Errors. It would be remiss of us not to mention the massive news item which is dominating world current affairs at the moment. The French Open being moved back to September. Took me by surprise. What do you think, David? What was your reaction? Because I WhatsApped you when the news came through.
French Open in the winter time? It's like, are they going to wear long sleeves? Is the clay going to react the same way?
Well, there's a famous saying, Paris in springtime. What is Paris in springtime without Roland Garros and the French Open? Yeah. When I heard it, I thought this is premature, this is an overreaction. But events are moving so quickly in the world that it now looks like, not a bad decision. It attracted a lot of criticism because apparently the top players weren't consulted, the US Open weren't consulted, the Laver Cup, the new date clashes with the Laver Cup, weren't consulted, and there's only a week between the US Open ending and the French Open starting. But now, despite the criticism, I think, well, why not? They needed a space in the calendar. If they weren't going to dive in, someone else was going to dive in. But let me first ask, how are you finding these moments, and are you still playing tennis? Has it affected your tennis playing? Because I know you play every day. Are you still playing every day? Are you still finding opponents?
Yes, it's a good question. Now the gyms have closed and all the tennis indoors is finished. In April, I normally stop my membership for the indoor tennis and then I start playing outdoors. So in that sense, everything is kind of similar. The difference...
You went your tennis hibernation around now, don't you? And switch from underground...
Exactly, to overground outside. But I've already noticed a difference in players. Each person is dealing differently with what's happening with the world, isn't it? So I've already had about 4 or 5 players that have told me that they are just going to wait and not going to play tennis until things are a little bit more certain.
What percentage have carried on of your opponents and what percentage have said, I'm sorry, David, but...
30%. 30% carrying on.
Right, I see, yeah.
Yeah.
But you're carrying on wherever possible.
Yes, if I can, I'm going to play tennis just the same as I always did, as long as we don't get stuck at home.
The matches you've been playing, have you been shaking hands at the net? What precautions have you taken, if any?
Singles, at least. There's no contact, practically. The other person is on the other side. Huh?
If you're baseline players, you're both volleyers and you're both in the net. Maybe it's not so good.
Yes. I guess we have to stay at the net 1 meter or 2 away from each other.
It's like picking up the balls. I mean, we don't know much about this disease. No, we're not scientists, but is that not a risk? You're picking up the ball.
Yes.
Tennis players touch themselves. I mean, Nadal must touch his face. He touches everywhere on his body.
Everywhere, yeah.
Else I won't even mention. David, we forgot to say, actually, to our listeners, we're not in the same room while we're doing this. We are in separate bunkers because of the virus.
Yeah.
Because I thought it's too dangerous coming round. So we're actually doing this through the power of Skype.
We are. Yes, people might have noticed already that your voice is coming out from some sort of megaphone or something.
I should take my face mask off, actually. We're quite far into this podcast. Is that better? Is that clearer now?
It's so much better. It's interesting what's happening is with those tennis players, people have different situations in their lives. Some have families, some live alone. Some feel a little bit more cautious about what's going on and some don't. So that's why we're getting these different reactions.
Just like us normal people, there's a variety of views on it, isn't there?
Yes, so that's why I'm getting some people that just don't want to play and others that...
That's me. I have stopped playing because I want to be safe, I don't want to give it to my father. I've got a young child as well.
There you go.
I could give it to him, he could pass it on, so that's why... Unfortunately, I'm trying to limit my social contacts, really.
Yeah, I understand that. It might feel strange to say this, but it's almost like nature is celebrating human beings being out of it. Nature is saying, hallelujah, fuck you humans. We're so happy to have the world for ourselves. And all the animals are coming into the cities now. Did you know?
Yeah, goats in the parks and foxes playing in the playgrounds.
Yes, the world is theirs
It's good.
now.
And bird songs louder than traffic sometimes, which is the way it should be.
We are being pushed away, and the world is being taken over by the beautiful people of this world, is the animals. My life is very similar. Nothing really changed much because I've always been a home person, but I have been playing tennis every day practically.
Yeah, I'm interested about that, and I thought, could we discuss? I don't want to get you into trouble, but discuss where you've been playing on the podcast. And
I'm keeping it as kind of a secret, so it doesn't become a place where lots of people go to. But it's beautiful days outside, man. It's really
very cruel that nature has brought this thing just when the weather is so lovely.
Yes, exactly. You go for walks, in Preston Park or around your house?
Yeah, Preston Park, because Niall needs to run and he can't really run near a road, so it's best in the park. But the park is very crowded. It's really pretty crowded.
Know.
So it's very hard to social distance. And also there's a lot of people just on park benches, they're not exercising.
No.
And there are little groups. There are not many, but a few groups, and you think, you're not members of the same family or household, I'm sure. You're just friends. It's strange. And people aren't sticking to the laws at all.
No, man, we, the white men, we don't listen, man. We just...
Lawless society.
Completely, man. We think we rule the world. That's why we colonized the whole damn world and we didn't give a damn.
Oh, yeah, that is true.
Whereas in Asia, if you see, they're recovering much faster than here. Of course, they started earlier, but we'll see what happens with us.
Well, stricter rules too.
Yeah, strict rules.
A lot of Asia.
For example, in Asia, if you don't use a mask, people look at you strange. Here it's the opposite. If you use a mask, people look at you strange.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the mask does much good myself because you can infect yourself putting it on and taking it off.
Okay, so, man, the world has changed and tennis is being affected as well. We just heard the news recently, don't know if it was today or a few days ago, that Wimbledon has cancelled for the year. Did you know about that?
I did, yeah. I think it was 24 hours ago. And you pick up a newspaper now. And by the time you finish reading it, the news is out of date. But
wow, well said.
Wimbledon was the second to last tournament to announce the cancellation, weren't they? Because the Australian Open is not as urgent for them because that's played in January, beginning of February.
Yeah.
But was it the right decision? What do you think, Wimbledon cancelling?
Yeah, they say that the reason why it was cancelled is because it's very difficult to continue keeping and preparing the courts. It's not as easy as hard court. I would have to be a person that works there and really understands how the grass is protected and prepared. But I'm sure they have the technology to control that. But who is this benefiting?
Very good point. I mean, you recommended to me, David, a clip on the Tennis Channel from a day ago where they discussed this very subject. And they said that the main losers are going to be Federer and Serena Williams because...
Federer and Serena Williams,
as you just said, Nadal is going to get another bite at Roland Garros in September.
And he's 19
he might well say, I'll play Roland Garros, but not the US Open because they're now going to be played only 1 week apart from each other, I think. So Federer's knocking on, he would have been maybe 39 at this Wimbledon. Mm-hmm. So I think if he carries on another Wimbledon next June, he'd be 40. Serena Williams looking for that elusive one. And let's not forget Djokovic as well.
Yeah, Djokovic as well, because Djokovic is chasing, and Wimbledon is his place these days. Federer always has a chance. And then Serena was the other side. I mean, she's running out of time, man. And she had a lot of chances to arrive to that 22 slams record, but now, is she going to keep playing or not? I watched an interview with Andy Roddick today, and he said that Serena will play until she gets that 22nd Grand Slam, no matter the age she has. But as a fan of Federer, it would be better for Federer, the French, to be cancelled and for the Wimbledon to be played. I don't know, Nadal can reach 20, and I don't know if Federer will have a chance of winning a slam this year. He would have to come and do that magic return like in Australia in 2017.
On the bright side, maybe he'll say, well, I've missed it, so I was planning to retire this year. I'm going to give it another year. So maybe that gives us another year before we have to pay our tennis obituary to Federer. Federer will face a dilemma, I suppose, because is it the US or the rescheduled French, which clashes with his Laver Cup, which is his baby, his brainchild. So he's going to face that dilemma. He might be the only person playing the Laver Cup because the others might fancy playing the French and the US more.
It's crazy to think about
dilemma.
that. Yes, it is. I'm very curious of what's going to happen there. I mean, every player that goes there loves it. But then again, the value of the Laver Cup, it's actually just a bonus. Yeah. So who is going to choose to play a bonus tournament when you have a Grand Slam to play in? It's true, isn't it? It puts it into
perspective, doesn't it? I mean, it's a shame for the Laver Cup because it's a developing tournament which has won a lot of fans, and it was just getting a foothold. So for its third edition to be cancelled, it's a shame in its developments.
For me, have two options. One, they cancel it for a year.
Yeah.
Or just put lower ranked players playing there. You know, the players that don't qualify to the French Open.
I know that you still watch that.
I would probably watch, but
the people who get knocked out early from the French Open, maybe kind of give them a late entry so you can have some squad rotation in there.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, if Federer gets knocked out early in the French Open, he could catch an aeroplane over and play the Laver Cup.
Yeah, it's very open, isn't it? It's not an easy thing. Easy. I'm very curious of what's going to happen.
Did you ever give any thought to playing behind closed doors? Should these tournaments have maybe considered having a slimmed down, say a Wimbledon played over 1 week, best of 3 sets for the men, 64 people in the draw, behind closed doors with just the minimum number of people in? Would that have been a solution?
I like your thinking. It's this is an unprecedented moment on planet Earth, so I think it's definitely a good idea for people that organize these things to keep an open mind, just like you were saying, just to speed up things, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yes, behind closed doors, but I think they wouldn't allow people anyway, so it would have to be an empty courts. We would still love it online and watching on TV.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, don't they generate a lot of money with the sales? It has to be, isn't it? They would end up losing money.
I'd be interested to know, actually. That's a really good question. I think the actual gate revenue must be a lot of it, but how much of the slice of the pizza is TV broadcasting?
True.
You know, the BBC itself must pay millions of pounds for the rights to Wimbledon.
That's true.
Sponsorship, which you get from the TV, you know. But I think probably it's best, you know, to kind of like say, no, that's it for this year. It's a good thing, really, I suppose Wimbledon didn't say we're going to reschedule till October, because then another little tournament would have been pushed out of the way. Yes. Whereas the French Open rescheduling, it's knocked a few tournaments out of kilter, hasn't it?
Yes.
So, and who's to say it will go ahead anyway, maybe in September.
That's what I was going to say.
We're still going to be kind of hiding under our beds and, you know, not going out for food.
True, because
it's all hypothetical, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, even if the world gets better in a month or 2 months, there's going to be leftovers. Even if the world gets back to normal, people will be scared to go back exactly to the normal lifestyle. Although, having said that, in Macau, where I grew up, my friends are already going for birthday parties and they're already going for dinners in restaurants. The world and the society is not back to normal, but as it recovers, people start going back to their worlds. But it will really depend on each society and how long it takes for things to go back to normal.
Are people in Macau going out for dinner now because they've beaten the virus and so the infection rate's gone down?
If I remember correctly, there was 40 cases, all recovered. The difference between Europe and Asia is that there everybody uses masks. Everybody follows what the government asks. And so, therefore, things recover a bit quicker. We'll see how it goes here in Europe. We might take a little bit longer. I've read today in an article that they are coming up with a £20 million package to help associations, tennis, tournaments, and players under ranking 100. Did you know about that? And what's your opinion?
I read something like that too. I think it's a really good idea. It's been slow, and I think they might have had to be pushed by players, including, I think, a player who's ranked around 100 really brought up the issue. And I think it's a good idea. I think it helps going to venues, as well as players. I don't know if it's going to coaches, because often the coaching arrangements are on quite an informal basis. There's no real contract for 6 months, so the coaches kind of lose their money too. But yeah, I think it's a great idea to give help to these guys. It's just a question of how broadly you give help to them. Take, for instance, in Brighton, there's a tennis shop, Nick Rivet Sports.
We use it.
And, they're going to be struggling, I would imagine. Djokovic's and Nadal's, it's their job, I suppose, to help out as much as they can too.
And Federer also gave a few million to help people in Switzerland. It was the LTA that are putting this
Djokovic
20 million.
Yeah, I suppose so, which is, the LTA has always done over the years. It's kind of the massive money from Wimbledon is ploughed into helping British grassroots tennis and British elite tennis as well, with not great results over the years, but hopefully this will help out those little up-and-coming players who make the game so great without us realising it, really. Tennis can't just be a travelling circus of the top 16 players.
Yes, exactly.
Winning Wimbledon, you need to win 7 matches. In order to win 7 matches, you need a field who are strong from number 1 to 132 and beyond that.
Yeah.
So it's really a time for everyone to get together and help.
Yeah, they even talk about how tennis can really suffer from what's going on here, and maybe some tournaments even dying off. The smaller tournaments. There can be tournaments that suddenly disappear and tennis world gets a little bit more narrow. Of course, in due time, everything goes back to normal. It's a time for the unknown, isn't it?
Well, I think the Grand Slam tournaments themselves have a responsibility to help out the smaller tournaments if they can. So, for instance, if the Rome Open, the Italian Open, Barcelona Open's under threat, that's a feeder tournament for the French Open. So hopefully the French Open can spare some funds for that, because these tournaments help the top players get in great condition for the French Open. So these tournaments are connected to each other. The Grand Slam tournaments are twins with other tournaments, aren't they, along the way? So maybe they could take the responsibility there and maybe rejig their prize money. Maybe the top players could take a bit of a pay cut to redistribute the funds to the feeder tournaments, which lead up to these big Grand Slam tournaments.
Depends how they are affiliated, isn't it? And who is helping who and who has responsibility for what.
Yeah.
Also, as you were talking about the Grand Slams, I was thinking maybe it's a good time for prices to drop, prize money, not billions and millions for the winners, and distribute the money better to help, balance things out. Yeah.
Second round losers. Yeah.
There's another question that is very difficult to answer, but I'm going to shoot and I'm going to ask you, which is...
Shoot away.
We're already thinking globally, what's going to happen to the world after we recover from this? How do you think this will affect the tennis world? I know it's difficult to say, but maybe the tickets will go up. Even the tennis clubs we play at will rise the prices in the near future.
I think, will there be enough money in the tennis world to offer top players that massive pot at the end of the rainbow for winning a tournament? The top tennis players are going to have a hard look in the mirror and say, how much of a cut can we survive? I think if the players at the lower end don't get enough support and help, maybe strike action. Maybe why should the world number 100 turn up to be beaten by Federer in the first round of Wimbledon if they're not getting enough money to recoup those losses?
Yeah.
It's not impossible strike action. And I think what's happened with strike action before, there was a strike at Wimbledon, I think 1973, and a lot of the top players didn't play, but some of the top players did. So I think it's going to maybe be an us and them situation. Say if all the top players went on strike, David, and you're suddenly in the world top 132. You're a very good player, but you're suddenly there. Are you going to say, no, I'm going to keep solidarity with my fellow players and go on strike? Or are you going to go, this is my big chance, I'm in Wimbledon?
Oh,
so
yes.
I think there's going to be a lot of dilemmas. Will the tennis world pull together, or will it split apart? Some take strike action, some don't. There has been a precedent with that Wimbledon thing. But what do you think? What are the consequences going to be?
That's what I'm thinking. There's going to have to probably be some payback from us to the government. Tennis has to be part of that consequence as well. I'm very curious. I think we might end up seeing some tournaments disappear for some time or forever. We'll see. I guess time will tell.
I think that would be a real shame if the 250s go away. Yeah, it is, but it's just how much can the top players support them? There'll probably be more taxation of the rich people, so the top players will get taxed more. Will that mean they'll want more prize money because we're going to get taxed more on this? So we want a bigger chunk so that we can still maintain our earnings. You would hope not, but people look after their bread and butter in these crises, don't they?
Yeah,
the more money you get, the more you want. The top tennis players like Federer and Nadal, Djokovic, they'll want to keep the goodwill of people going. They won't want someone saying, look at Federer driving around in his limousine, whereas that tennis umpires had to take a 50% pay cut.
Yes, and they're so important. What is tennis without umpires? It would be a chaos.
Well, we know what tennis is without umpires because we've been through it ourselves for the past 20 years, and there's a few spiky moments, but we've survived. We're still alive.
Yes,
with no umpires.
It's true, man. What do you see? People staying at home. Do you see any positive coming out of this, or do you see only negatives? How do you feel these days at home with your family and with what the activities you're doing? You're working from home, isn't it?
Yes, still working from home. Yeah, very tricky, like a lot of people, but very lucky just still to have a work because I work in the public sector, whereas other people it's less certain. So I'm working from home, but I have none of the equipment. I wasn't prepared for this. So I don't have an office chair. I'm working on a wooden stool, and I've only got one screen, whereas I'm used to having two monitors. You really
that's
need
so important.
Two monitors. Yeah. I'm phoning up customers. I work in the world of benefits. Very, very boring. If I told you about it, I'd have to kill you because it's so boring. But I'm having to phone up customers on my phone and withhold the number. So, yeah, in terms of changing it, I do wonder in my job whether at the end of all this, they'll say at my work, well, everyone's coped so well working from home, we're going to sell off the office for £2 million.
Boom.
And you're all going to work from home forever. So that's worried. But you said what positives there were. It's nice to spend time with the family. A lot of people are homeschooling. Yes. A lot of people get an appetite for schooling their kids at home and go, oh, this could lead to some teaching. And another thing is, I think the people who are key workers during this time, who've been allowed to kind of go to work and have their kids in nursery, maybe it's time for them to get more credits, like the humble supermarket worker. Who would have known how vital they are in keeping us going so we can go to the supermarket?
Yeah.
Probably not the best paid people in the world, but maybe they should be paid more. I hope there's a reevaluation afterwards and the people who've really come out and kept things going, really get their due and their credit. The NHS staff, of course, but there are other unsung heroes too. You're carrying out vital computer repairs to keep people able to have the tools to carry on working from home. And who would have known that these people would be heroes? So let's give them a pat on the back, and I hope when it all comes out at the end of this, they get the credit they deserve.
I really like your words. It's true. It's interesting you say that superstars, and there's a lot of people now even volunteering for this kind of jobs, helping people and helping the supermarkets and etc.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Just yesterday I had a customer ask me to set up their computer so they could go to church online on Sunday. And this relates to what you're saying about maybe this is definitely something that will shape society, which goes to what you were saying. I'm sure there's going to be medium-sized and small companies that think, why are we paying this if we were able to do our job from homes? Why are we paying this rent? It could shape the world to a better place. Then there's another thing that I was thinking about, which is this is an introspective time. Even though it's very dangerous and people are dying, the people that survive and are at home have a time to look in the mirror and think of themselves and try to improve and think how can they go back to the world one day and be better people. Who knows, man? I mean, we can take this as a chance to evolve, to grow, instead of a chance to kill ourselves. What about your tennis? Have you been exercising at all? What are you doing about your fitness?
Yeah, I was very good for the first week of the lockdown. I was going out for a run at night when there were less people around.
Great.
And I was really going for, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and making sure that the last kilometre, the last 5 minutes, I was going full pelt.
I do
But then
that too.
after a while, I don't know if you found this too, you think, well, what am I aiming for? There's, this could carry on for 12 weeks. And your mind plays tricks and you go, why not get back into training when they announce the lockdown's going to end? You're wasting your fuel here. So I'm struggling, but I did go for a run this morning. And to answer your question in terms of coming back from tennis, when they say, look, it's okay for you to go back on the public courts, because I think the government did say don't play social sports like golf.
Yes.
It didn't define tennis, but tennis is also a social sport. You're picking up a ball which has been handled by your opponent. So, when they relax that and say, there's no restrictions exercise,
you can go for
then I
it.
go back to it.
Yeah. They were talking about 3 weeks lockdown, maybe a little bit more, maybe a bit less, and then we'll be going back to the courts, isn't it? I've been playing, but I do take that sanitizer and I use it, and I stay away from my face when I'm playing it as well with my hands. And it's an interesting situation. Ivona has been going for runs as well. I went for a run the other day as well. Hey, one way or another, exercise is good. So you're not losing anything by going for a little run.
Do you think you're getting an edge on other players for the tennis season?
I told my partner today as a joke, Iran, when this thing ends, we're going to be the best players in Brighton.
I think you will be. I mean, the Park singles is looking good.
Yeah, man, this year was the year I was getting ready to get to the final, but let's finalize it with one thing that we didn't talk about, our local tennis. You are aware that the Park's doubles and singles starts every year in April, yeah?
Oh,
it's been cancelled, at least for now.
Yeah.
There are ideas of or cancelling completely for the year and skipping one whole year, but maybe they could just play half. And
instead
then
of home and away,
away.
How about another idea?
Go.
If it's really short and the lockdown carries on till July or something, could you have a Parks knockout competition where, say, Saltdean play Dyke in the last 16? So a bit like the World Cup when it gets to the knockout, or Wimbledon, but only with clubs involved.
That would be very nice. I like that idea.
Like the new Davis Cup, actually. Like the new Davis Cup.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's important for the people here in Brighton, the tennis people, to think about this and think how to be creative and open about the options, because we do want to play tennis. Sorry?
It's very different to the Grand Slams, because the Grand Slams rely on big crowds for the atmosphere.
Yeah.
But with your Parks, it's just the important thing is just the match.
Just the match.
So I think, people should try and keep that going as much as possible.
Yeah, I organize the St. Anne's Tennis Challenge every year, at least 1 or 2 tournaments per year. And I'm going to open it as soon as they open the doors of tennis. I think I'm going to put it out there and see if people are interested.
I'm sure they will be, especially if the Parks is slimmed down.
True.
Yeah, I think it'll be more successful than ever.
Yeah, that sounds good. I like that. And I hope you compete on it too.
Well, I don't know. I think I'm ready for my Zimmer frame first. But I'd love to. I miss tennis.
Of course.
I really do. Running isn't the same.
It's not the same.
You're not using your mind in the same way. It's less skill, you can't say, that's a skillful piece of running. You're not weak,
it's true.
or you're not using creativity. I like running. I've got to like running.
You do, and you competed in marathons and, for the sake of competing. So you have a history in some semi-professional running.
Yeah, but it's chalk and cheese, tennis and running, I think.
It's true. It's not the same. We love our tennis. All right, so what are you going to do for the rest of your day?
The rest of the day, I've got leftover roast dinner. I'm actually eating quite well since lockdown, so that's another advantage of lockdown, because you're spending more time at home, you've got more time to cook.
Yeah, you can improve as a cook.
I'm saving the time travelling to work as well.
That's true.
That would take me about an hour a day. So, I don't miss the journey. It's a pretty horrible journey.
Some things are very nice. All right, so it was really good to talk to you.
Excellent. I enjoyed that, David.
Even though there's no tennis going around, tennis does not have to stop. It's time to watch classics and go back in time and watch so many great matches. It doesn't need to stop. Me and Jim, we will be doing our podcast monthly, as always. even without tennis, and we will have different topics to talk about, which will be down to tennis anyway.
Yeah.
All right, so, Jim, thanks for your time here. And
no, thank you, David, and stay safe. Yes,
we will come back in a few weeks' time for another episode.
Absolutely. God bless everyone, and just stay safe.
Take care. Bye-bye.
See you, David.
Bye.
Yeah, bye.